Thank you once again for tuning in to KSU Gold. My name is Lindsay McGaha. I'm a media manager here at Kentucky State University, and I'm your host. This show is being brought to you by Kentucky State University's College of Agriculture, Food Science, and Sustainable Systems in partnership with the Frankfort Kiwanis Club. And on this show, we give our viewers a peek of our faculty, our staff, and our students and their efforts to continue our golden legacy of achievement here at Kentucky State University. On today's show, we have two professors in studio that are here to give us all the buzz on bees. And one of them is Dr. Thomas Webster. Welcome to the show, Dr. Webster.
Thank you.
Well, while a lot of people are excited about the flowers or the warm weather that the season brings, they may not be so ecstatic about the bees or the swarm of bees that the season brings. Tell us a little bit about bees and a lot of the misconceptions that many people may have about them.
Okay, yeah. Most people, they think about bees, they think about honey, and they think about stings, but they don't think too much about the pollination of plants. And actually, this is the most important thing that bees do, okay? If we think about cherries or pumpkins or berries or squash, a whole bunch of fruits and vegetables are pollinated by bees. And without the bees, it would be very difficult to have the quality and the quantity of fruits and vegetables that we have. And also, bees pollinate some plants that are consumed by livestock. For example, alfalfa is fed to dairy cattle and beef cattle and horses. And if we think about all the dairy products that we like to eat, ice cream and yogurt and milk, and then all the beef products we like to eat, that adds up to a lot of food, I think, a big part of our diet. And then here we are in Kentucky, which is a horse state, and there's a big industry around horses here, and it's even our symbol here at Kentucky State University, right? So there's a lot to be said for bees, and that Halloween pumpkin, most people don't think about bees when they get that Halloween pumpkin. For sure.
Now, how long have you been at Kentucky State, and how long have you been doing research here on bees?
I have been here for 28 years, and for that entire time I've been doing research on bees and also extension work with people outside of the university, beekeepers and others that have an interest in honeybees.
Tell us about some of your research that you do here on campus.
Well, we're working on several things. We're studying a disease of honeybees that's very widespread. It infects the stomach of the bee. It really slows them down and makes them less able to do the pollination that we rely on. It makes them less able to produce honey, less able to survive the wintertime. And so it's an expense for beekeepers. It's an expense that they have to pass on to those that grow all these crops, okay? So it makes all these wonderful foods a little bit more expensive when bees have sicknesses, parasites, other kinds of problems. Okay, we're also studying ways to help the bees get through the winter, and so we're monitoring hives with temperature probes through the wintertime to see which hives are having trouble, and then we go in and we try to see the nature of the problems by measuring whether they can keep their temperatures up. Just like we take our own temperatures, sometimes if we're sick and if our temperature is too high, then we know that there's something wrong with us. If the beehive temperature is too low, then we know there's something wrong with them too, and we need to pay attention.
Now, pollinators over the past decade have decreased drastically. Tell us about some of the research and what you all are doing to address the decline.
Okay. Well, in pertaining to this one disease, of course, we're looking at some new treatments, and some are showing promise. We're trying to make them so that they're available to beekeepers in a way that's not too expensive and not too complicated and so forth. And then if we can find out more about why the bees are dying in the wintertime. It's maybe about a third of the hives in Kentucky die every wintertime. So that's a lot. That makes things very expensive for beekeepers, and then they have to pay money to get more hives and build their numbers back up. And this is happening in all parts of the United States, not just here, and in much of the world too. There's new parasites of bees, there's new diseases that we're still wrestling with, and there's some pesticides that beekeepers have to watch out for. So and other pollinators too. It's not just honeybees, but there are other kinds of bees and butterflies and so forth that pollinate, and they're affected also.
How has the decline affected our produce that we consume at the grocery store?
Well, at first you'd think it wasn't affecting anything. I mean, we can still go to the store and buy cherries or pumpkins or squash and say, what's the big deal? That's still there. But what we're not aware of usually is the increase in price. And even if we're paying close attention, we might not notice that there's an extra 10 or 20 cents a pound in there because the growers are having more trouble. To give an example, a few years ago in southern Indiana, there was a farmer who was growing pumpkins. And it was getting to the time where those pumpkins needed to have some bees. They were just in the flowering stage. This is before the pumpkins started to develop. But those pumpkin flowers need to be pollinated. And this pumpkin grower could not find a beekeeper who had enough hives, even within a large radius of that spot in southern Indiana. And beekeepers in western Kentucky were scrambling to find enough hives to help this grower. And as far as I know, he was not able to get enough hives, and so his pumpkin crop was reduced. Okay, so that was an expense for him too. So that's an example of a lowered production, which means for us a higher price or maybe less availability too. We might not have these crops available for such a long period, and they may come on into the grocery store a little bit later, disappear a little bit sooner, and may not be quite the quality that we would like.
Well, many women around the world are probably celebrating the fact that, bees are a matriarchal species that's dominated by a queen. Tell us about the female and the male roles of bees within the hive.
That's right. Honeybees are quite a bit different from most other creatures. The queen bee is, of course, a female, and the hive is mostly worker bees, which are also females. And the worker bees, true to their name, they do the work. They go out to the flowers, they take care of the hive, they take care of the immature bees, they groom the queen and clean up around the house. The males serve only to mate, and they only mate with the queen. So they are not productive hive members in that sense. So it's quite a bit different. Most animals, you see the males and the females are both doing chores of one sort or another, but it's a very different thing in the honeybee hive.
They say if you don't work, you don't eat. They're out of there.
Well, it's a little bit different. In this case, the drones are able to eat, but sometimes they are evicted from the hive in the fall. Yeah, you can actually see when we get that first frost around October, if you go out to the beehives, you can see the worker bees are kicking the drone bees out, and because they are not going to be very helpful in the wintertime. So.
Can they survive outside of the hive?
Nope. They will be history. It's a kind of a cruel fact of nature, but this is actually what happens with the honeybee hive.
You mentioned winter. Bees have a unique ability to warm, or I guess regulate the temperature in their hive throughout the year. How is this done?
They do it by consuming the honey that they have stored, and then the honey, of course, has sugar in it. It's a source of energy. And what they do is they contract their flight muscles to make heat. Just like when we use our muscles, if we run up a flight of stairs or run down the block, we generate heat because we are burning sugar molecules that are in our blood. The bees are much the same. They consume the honey and they turn the sugars into heat energy by contracting their muscles, okay? And then they all cluster tight together, so even if it's below zero outside, if it's snow and ice and very cold, the middle of that cluster of bees is above 80 degrees. We've actually measured this on a cold January morning and found that they are very good at keeping warm.
Well, when we come back, we're going to hear a little bit from a professor that you're working with in the College of Business, as well as the computer science that you're working with in order to develop, I think it's thermometer, how do you say it, monitoring systems or a device, like
That's
a thermometer inside of
electronic
the beehive.
thermometers, yes.
There you go. You all stay tuned.
Kentucky State is a great school to attend, especially because of the small class sizes. You get that one-on-one experience with your teachers, your mentors.
I've really enjoyed being here at Kentucky State University, working and studying with the professors and students here who are very knowledgeable, very engaging, and very helpful.
You're able to actually talk to the professors. They're really caring and understanding and want to see you succeed. You also get in the field earlier. As a freshman, you're able to go out to the farms, you're able to do research projects.
After my undergrad degree in agriculture, I was looking forward to continue my studies. I was really interested in Kentucky State University and I love the research programs here.
Kentucky State has prepared me for a career in agriculture because you get the experience of being able to do different research projects. You get to actually collect and analyze your data.
So it was a perfect fit and really, really excited to be working in this field.
(1947) alumni graduate Moneta Sleet Jr. became the first African American to win the Pulitzer Prize for photography. He was awarded for a photo that he captured of Coretta Scott King at Martin Luther King Jr.'s funeral.
The honeybees are responsible for up to $19 billion worth of crop production in the United States and over $200 billion of crop production in the world. The honeybees recently have been infected with various kinds of diseases, including pathogens and parasites like Varroa, and the pathogen that we're studying, which is Nosema cerani. The Nosema cerani has actually been linked to colony collapse disorder. That disease in itself is just one in a group of diseases that infect honeybees.
I'm using a histological technique, a histochemistry technique to study the physiology and the anatomy of the bee gut to prove and identify the theory that Marty has about the disease that is affecting the bee population. Hopefully I can identify and we could study the source, and it would ultimately help the beekeepers to use appropriate techniques to be more efficient with the population of the bees and ultimately results into a higher yield of the bee production.
Cecil's and my research has changed how people look at the midgut. Until we started doing this in 2012, very few people used histological techniques to examine the midgut. We developed several different staining techniques, beginning with hematoxylin and eosin, a routine stain, and then went on to find different fluorescent stains that allow us to see calcium deposits, different types of anatomical structures. We were the first people to actually find something called setae, which are like hairs in the back end of the midgut, that actually may be responsible for moving the spores into the rectum and then released into the environment. One of the biggest problems for hobbyists, sideliners, and commercial beekeepers is that there is no accepted method for identifying the Nosema pathogens in the field. Most of this is done in a laboratory and using high-power microscopes and special kinds of stains. The biggest problem with the decline in honeybee population is that honeybees actually pollinate up to 1/3 to 40% of the crops in the world. So if the bees were to die, you would lose almonds, avocados, squash, tomatoes, coffee, beef, milk, and various other products. When referring to this, it can be a little bit complex as to why it affects beef. Beef eat alfalfa. Alfalfa is pollinated by bees. If the bees can't pollinate the alfalfa, the cows can't eat the alfalfa. If they don't eat the alfalfa, there's no milk and there's no beef. They're also responsible for the cotton that we wear on our bodies. Honeybees pollinate cotton. If the honeybee populations were to decline, it would be very difficult to make cotton products anymore. So we'd probably all be using nylon.
I'm here with Dr. Jens Hanneman, a professor in computer science. Tell us a little bit about what computer science is, because there's often confusion with it, and what students in that field of study are actually learning to do.
Yeah, so one of the things that I always have to tell my incoming freshmen is that, well, computer science really is not about computers per se. So there's this famous quote by Edgar Dijkstra, who is one of the most famous computer scientists of all time, and he said that computer science is no more about computers than astronomy is about telescopes. So of course we know a lot about computers and we use computers, but our field of study, just like for astronomers, their field of study is stars in the universe. So for us, the field of study really is information. So, and in my native German and Edgar Dijkstra's native Dutch, actually we don't call it computer science. It's really a misnomer. We call it actually informatics, and that's what it's all about. It's about information, detecting patterns and processing information.
Now, with the information that you collect, what are you using it to determine?
Well, whatever problem you're trying to solve. So we're there to support whatever humanity needs from us. So we support research like in Tom Webster's case with the beehive monitoring, or we do data mining to make processes more efficient. You name it, Google.
All that good stuff, right?
Yeah.
Well, we just spoke with Dr. Thomas Webster, and he's a professor in College of Agriculture doing bee research. And College of Agriculture is actually working with the College of Business and Computer Science to develop a beehive thermometer. I guess it's not a thermometer, a temperature monitor. Is that correct?
Exactly.
So, and you've been working on that. Tell us a little bit about it, and then show us what it looks like.
Yeah, so as Tom said, it's really important to, especially in the wintertime, to know when a hive is in distress. And one of the easiest ways to do that is to look at the temperature distribution in the hive and see whether the temperature is where it's supposed to be, because bees don't hibernate. So we really literally place a lot of temperature sensors inside a beehive. We can go up to 96 of them, and then connect that to a little computer to collect the data, and then have that connect to the internet to actually transport the data to a web system, basically a server, and then we can use that data to analyze and see whether a hive is normal or is in distress. And when it's in distress, we can use that to send a text message to the beekeeper and say, hey, check this out. So, and this is what this actually looks like. So the sensors aren't very big, of course, and they don't need to, and they shouldn't be. So this is one of them, and we have up to 96 inside the hive, so that we can then really figure out where in the hive the
Let's hold it still so they can
bees
get a close-up
are.
on it.
And then this is the little system that actually takes in all the data and stores it temporarily before we then transmit it to yet another small computer. So this is one per hive. This is a prototype, so it's going to be much smaller, and then of course mounted to the hive. And then for each of the different hive cases, we have like one of them, then one of these systems connect to a little central computer that then transmits the data over the internet to our systems, where we host them and analyze the data for the beekeepers.
Okay, did you know much about bees before you started working on this specific
no, not at
project?
all. I was really surprised to see that bees don't hibernate, and then they actually like huddle like penguins. So it's amazing working with Tom, because he just knows so much about bees, and it's a great learning curve, and I'm a little bit freaked out by them anyway. So, but yeah, I still haven't mustered the courage to actually go with him and actually check out and don the gear and go in.
No, this is the first time that this has ever been done that you know of. Is that correct?
As far as we know, yes. Yeah.
Gotcha. So it can technically change how research is done with bees year-round, having this information.
Yeah. So it's and the nice thing I think about this is really the real-time aspect of it, so that we can analyze the data on the spot and then detect when a hive is in distress, and then send out a notification. Because Tom, many times beekeepers will come to Tom with almost disintegrated bees because the hive's been dead for a week or two. So.
Now, you work with the College of Ag doing other types of research as well, environmental type of research. Tell us about the environmental monitoring that you all do as well.
So this has been started actually by a grad student of mine also, and with Dr. Gabriel Medin. So we have a bunch of environmental monitoring towers that can take in lots and lots of data: humidity, soil humidity, methane levels, everything. So we have one tower on our research farm, one tower is, I think, in the Boone National Forest, and one tower is actually in downtown Louisville, or supposed to go up in downtown Louisville. I'm not exactly sure. And and that's a lot of data that's being generated there. And so our job there is, again, to support that and take in that data and then look for whatever patterns we can find to help us figure out the health of the environment in general, and especially how climate change impacts that, and how to basically respond to this.
The computer science department is growing significantly. You all have the 3D printer, and students that are in that department also get to learn about video games and video game design, which is really cool. And also a terminology that you may call the Internet of Things, which seems to be a pretty popular term out. Tell us what that means.
Yeah, it's really basically an extension of the monitoring system that we do for the beehives. So it's really about intelligent systems, basically in this case making your life more convenient. And we all have our cell phones these days, but that's just the start. So you got your internet-connected thermostats, security cameras, the whole 9 yards. And part of what we're doing there is not only the technical side of things, but also, because we're a liberal arts institution and we're very well aware of that, the security and the privacy implications. Because yes, it's convenient, but it's, of course, our responsibility also to make sure that this stuff cannot be abused to harm you or to defraud you or what have you.
So is anything that sends data like a computer that's not a computer?
Yeah, well, it's a tiny little computer that really does one thing and one thing only. So it's not like your general purpose computer that's on your desktop where you can have a word processing program and a DVD player and an audio player. All that. These are little computers just like our monitoring system that just do one thing and one thing only. So we call them embedded systems because they're embedded in something larger that you're not aware of. And when you connect an embedded system to the internet, then that's what these days we call the Internet of Things. It's a buzzword really, but it's a good buzzword. It catches really the gist of the thing.
Well, I'm noticing your shirt. It says Stimulate Your Mind, and STEM is a research project that they have going on here at Kentucky State, but you're working with the Verizon Innovative Learning Program. Tell us what that is and how it's changing the lives of students within our community.
So yeah, STEM is a term in education, and that stands for science, technology, engineering, and math. And the main problem, especially when it comes to KSU's mission as an historical black college and university, is that we really don't have much of diversity in STEM fields. And that's really hurting the creativity and the overall work that's being done in those areas, because the diversity really has shown that if you have diverse teams, that they come up with better solutions to problems. And part of the problem is really a pipeline problem, and this is where the Verizon project comes in. This is geared towards minority black males, because we're losing kids pretty much around the middle school mark, and mostly indeed strongly the black males at that age. So we're working with the Carter G. Woodson Academy in Lexington to try to keep them interested in STEM, to show them pathways to STEM careers and say, hey, this is what you can do with that stuff. You may have not been aware of that. So we're trying to introduce them to a whole wide area. And the Verizon grant really is about combining 3D printing from the current new upcoming maker movement with mobile applications. So what we're doing here is we're building these three little 3D printed derby cars, and we literally 3D print those, and we stuff them full of electronics. The kids can race them down the ramp, and as they race, the data is being transmitted over the network, over Wi-Fi, and they can actually look at the performance data on their cell phones and then change the design and improve on the design, and then race the car again and see what happens.
Wow. Well, thank you so much, Dr. Hanneman, for being on KSU Gold and for coming on and sharing your information, as well as the partnership that you have with the College of Agriculture. We really appreciate it. You all stay tuned. We're going to hear from Dr. Farida Olden, a professor in the College of Agriculture, on how environmental stressors are affecting the decline on bees.
When I came to Kentucky State University, I could connect one-to-one to all the professors. I could talk to them, I could share my problems and then ask for the solutions. After my undergrad degree in agriculture, I was looking forward to continue my studies. It's easy to communicate to everybody here. In Kentucky State University, I found a very friendly education system here. I always wanted to learn more about the agriculture system, so it's a good thing about Kentucky State University.
Kentucky State University has had 5 name changes. In 1886, it was known as the State Normal School for Colored Persons. In 1902, it was changed to Kentucky Normal Industrial Institute. The name changed in 1926 to Kentucky State Industrial College for Colored Persons. In 1952, it was later changed to Kentucky State College. The school became known as Kentucky State University in 1972.
I'm Farida Alden, Assistant Professor at the School of Agriculture, Kentucky State University. I have a research program that is related to the study of the impact of environmental stressors on pollinators and especially honeybee. To understand the importance of pollinators, we need to grasp the scale of the environmental service they are providing. 80% of the flowering plants in the ecosystems are pollinated by bees, and of course bees and especially honeybee pollinate crops. In the US, crops are a $16 billion business. So imagine a world without bees would be a world without honey and most of the flowering plants that you love. Honeybees lately, since 2006, are facing a challenging problem. It is a syndrome called colony collapse disorder, CCD. And it is basically foraging bees that are not coming back to the hive for a very unknown reason, and thus the hives will collapse. Research is ongoing to understand this problem, and there is no single cause that has been pinpointed. However, we know that there are many factors that have been associated with this problem, and these are environmental factors such as pathogens, pesticides, and of course climate change and poor nutrition. I have worked and completed a project that is related to different diets that have different nutritional values, and that in the context of Nosema infection. And also I am completing a project that is related to different diets in the context of pesticide insult. An AgBio genomics research lab is very important at many levels for the community. First, for students, because it gives them the opportunity to learn highly sought after skills that will give them an edge on the job market. Also, we use in such labs very powerful tools to conduct research. Such tools are used in advanced fields like medicine, and thus the research outcomes are of very high quality. Thirdly, the research questions that are tackled in such lab, because they are AgBio, they are of relevance to agriculture in Kentucky. So the outcomes are of value to them, and they can be disseminated through extension efforts.
Thank you once again for tuning into KSU Gold. Be sure to check out the show every Monday at 8 o'clock p.m. Until next time.